folks, and thank you for dropping in on Maple Loves Making Movies News. Today we have Emmeline Pankhurst herself dropping by to give us a quick brief about her life and how she inspired so many women of her time and continues to do it. Take it away, Emmeline.
Thank you. In my day, women had to work in dangerous factories and were paid less than men. We were the property of our husbands, and we had no right to our children. This had to change. For over 100 years, women have protested peacefully to win the right to vote. Since we had no rights under the law, we needed the laws changed, and the only way that could happen was if we were able to vote. At a young age, I was inspired by my parents' political activism. When I grew older, I worked towards women's right to vote. In 1903, I founded the WSPU with my daughters, Christabel and Sylvia. WSPU stood for Women's Social and Political Union. Our motto was deeds, not words. We realized the only way men would pay attention to us was if we spoke their language, war. We started using militant actions to get noticed. We blew up mailboxes, burned down government officials' houses, chained ourselves to gates and broke windows. Police would openly beat us on the streets. So we learned jiu-jitsu to defend ourselves. Some of us could flip a man of 200 pounds over our head. Government and media made us seem crazy. Women who joined the suffragettes lost a lot. Respect from their community and support from their husbands. We got arrested just for gathering on the streets. And we also got arrested for vandalism. When we were in prison, we went on hunger strikes. The government feared that if the suffragettes died of hunger in prison, there would be public outcry. So, they force-fed us. This means they shove a tube down your nose and pour soupy ground foods down the tube. It was a horrible and dangerous procedure. It was terrible for our health. We didn't have to go on hunger strikes, but we were so devoted to our cause, we allowed them to ruin our bodies. In 1913, the Cat and Mouse Act was invented. This allowed prisons to release us hunger strikers long enough to regain our health and then rearrest us. People in power can be so cruel. At the Epsom Derby in 1913, something happened that would change everything. 500,000 people were in attendance at the Derby. King George V was there and his horse was in the race. Just as the horses rounded the last corner to the finish line, Emily Davison ducked out of the fence and stepped in front of the king's horse. She was holding the suffragette flag. Emily Davison brought the 2-ton horse down and flipped the rider. She died 2 days later of injuries. This was the first ever suffragette activity that was caught on camera. The next week, there was a funeral procession in the streets for Emily Davison. The streets were crowded to a maximum, and people even watched from balconies. We got the attention we had been looking for generations. This was the last suffragette activity before World War I. In 1914, World War I broke out. I stopped all WSPU activities, and the government freed all imprisoned suffragettes to help with war effort. We took the jobs men had left behind. This really showed the people that we were as committed to our country as men were. Once the war was over, the government granted women over 30 the right to vote. But by then, all men over 21 were allowed to vote. It still wasn't fair. Women and men should be equal. So, I still wasn't going to give up. I kept on giving speeches in other countries. Back in the United Kingdom in 1927, I was chosen to stand for Parliament, but I was not in good health. I died June 14th, 1928, and just a couple weeks later, a law was passed that gave women equal voting rights as men.
You have to make more noise than anybody else. You have to be more obtrusive than anybody else. You have to fill all the papers more than anybody else. In fact, you have to be there all the time and see that they do not snow you under. If any life is to be sacrificed, it shall be ours. We won't do it ourselves, but we will put the enemy in the position where they have to choose between giving us freedom or giving us